Hey there, it's Kat Kinsman, Executive Features Editor at Food & Wine, and this fall, we're launching the new Food & Wine Classic in Charleston with our partners at Southern Living and Travel + Leisure, and we want to see you there. Join us September 27th through the 29th to learn from iconic chefs, share a glass with innovative wine experts, and experience Charleston with one-of-a-kind events. Tickets are on sale now at foodandwine.com/Charleston Classic. That's foodandwine.com/Charleston Classic. See you down in Charleston.
Whether you're a chef or just love going to restaurants, you know the best ingredients are everything. West Home is working with the land to create nature-led Australian Wagyu. Learn more at westhome.com.
You're listening to Heritage Radio Network.
Hey, welcome to Beer Sessions Radio on Heritage Radio Network. I'm Jimmy Carboni, I'm the host. We're celebrating our 15th year on Beer Sessions Radio and 15 years of Heritage Radio Network out of Brooklyn, New York. Support us, become a member at heritageradionetwork.org. Well, back in June, I got the pleasure of being at one of the coolest beer events I've ever been to in my life. And these two cats that are joining in were both brewers who were there. So we're going to talk a little bit about the Pils and Love Fest Take 2. We did an in-depth recording there, and we're following up with two special guests who make great lagers. So let's go around the room. We'll start with Todd, and then Ashley, just give a brief introduction of yourselves.
Cool. Hey, I'm Todd DiMatteo, and I'm one of the owners, and I'm the brewer at Good Word Brewing and Public House in Duluth, Georgia.
I'm Ashley Carter, head brewer, co-owner of Bierstadt Lager House in Denver, Colorado.
All right. So, you both made lagers. So just tell us what lagers you made and brought to Brooklyn or typically make. And a little more your feedback about the event, because I thought it was pretty great. Didn't you, Ashley?
Yeah, I mean, we only make lager, and I always only bring the one Pils that we always make, which is slow pour Pils. So, yeah, nothing special for it, only that it's special because it's my favorite beer. So I guess there's that. But the event's always cool. I've been to a bunch of Pils of Love now. One actually in Italy, one in California, one in Maine. This one, unfortunately, this event was not as fun for me as everybody else. All of my kegs got destroyed. Like all of them. I think somebody messed up and nobody wants to admit it, but all my kegs showed up destroyed. So I actually ended up overnighting a case of Pils, which wasn't quite enough. So sadly, I was not much fun to be around during the event. But the event itself is always super rad and so many cool people and just the way they have it set up and just how casual it is. And honestly, just like not having a ton of people there is nice. You're just like a little bit to spread out, and it's, enough time to actually sit and drink, whole beers basically.
Yeah, there were an amazing number of brewers there and brewery owners. I mean, just for my list, it was like, besides seeing Todd from Good Word and Ashley from Bierstadt, I mean, I knew Patrick from Westkill in New York and Zach Kinney, KCBC, even Luke from Godspeed in Toronto came. Tim and the whole Oxbow crew were there, which was amazing. Meeting Ago and Johnny from Birrificio Italiano, Sean from the Seed Beer. There's just the list goes on and on. I couldn't believe how great it was, and I want to thank everyone that put it together. Threes Brewing, Oxbow, and Johnny and Ago from Birrificio Italiano. Todd, what was it like for you being there? Because I see you all the time. I see you at different events. You've got events coming up.
Yeah, I mean,
pretty great.
It was good. Unlike Ashley, I hadn't been to one of the Pils of Love, and I talked with Tim a while back. Tim at Oxbow, and he was like, "Yeah, if we do another one, I'd love to have you." So I love just being part of it. It was great. Anytime you get to New York, it's always fun, and so I had a blast. And I think, like Ashley said, like that setting was pretty dope. In the little courtyard of Threes. But yeah, it was. I don't know how many people came, but it definitely felt like it was brewers and just industry people only. It didn't, I'm sure there were just randos there, but it felt like everyone who was there knew exactly what was up. And I think that comes from being in a place like, like Brooklyn, where everybody kind of knows the drill. Where sometimes, you go to Hillcast and people are like, you get, random kind of dumb questions or whatever, but everybody was super professional. So it was fun. And again, like you and Ashley both said, it was great to have such cool people there. I did the show with you and Luke a long time ago, so I never met him in person, and he and I've traded emails and stuff. So it was good to finally meet him and all that. But yeah, it was a fucking blast.
Yeah, it was definitely a curated crowd of all good people. Ashley, I want to know more about you, because everyone talks about your lagers and great job that you're doing. How did you get started brewing?
Yeah, I mean, like everybody else, actually probably not like everybody else. 50% of the people came from another background, that was kind of, they were done with their corporate jobs. I have pretty much never really had a real job. I don't really feel like. I'm kind of not an adult like that, despite being almost 40. So, I started out, I grew up in Colorado, which has a great craft beer scene. I went to college in Asheville, North Carolina, also another great craft beer scene. Played soccer there, got my degree in mathematics. Went and coached college soccer for a little while out in Michigan, also another place with a great craft beer scene, and New York. So I kind of got spoiled that way, kind of growing up with really excellent beer. So it was kind of always something, we were starting to go do and hang out. I decided to stop coaching. Turns out hanging out with talking with 15-year-old girls on the phone isn't as fun as it sounds. At least not for me. It was a little tough, doing that and the recruiting and just kind of how hardcore it was in kind of a gross way. I don't know, youth sports is excellent, but I have a whole other diatribe on that. So I moved back to Colorado, just kind of got a job as a barista, started homebrewing because I really started to like beer a lot. And I thought, I could take up a hobby for once, because I was done playing soccer, which I'd never had time for a hobby before in my entire life. So,
yeah.
So I started homebrewing, pick up this hobby, and decided that I totally suck at homebrewing and you can't control anything. So why not turn the only thing I ever had as a hobby into a career? And I started working at this brewery called Dry Dock. I thought I might just bartend there, but they had a homebrew store attached to it, and they hired me at the homebrew store since I had homebrew experience. So kind of just started there and realized very quickly that by just watching and everything, and started volunteering in the brewery, and got my first professional brewing job in April of 2011. So I just moved back to Colorado back in the middle of 2010. So in less than a year, I was starting my new career, I guess. And yeah, kind of took off from there.
Wow. Well, what drew you to German beer?
I think over time, when you first, any nerd or whatever, any nerd brewer, wannabe, you had I had a notebook of all the cool ingredients, that I could use. And by today's standards, they're not exotic at all, of course. But I'll toast my own coconut and a bunch of stuff. But the guy that was at the brewery at the time, the head brewer, who's now my business partner and partner, he was nobody's going to know if you're a good brewer or not unless you can show people that you can make beer with, 3 malts, 2 hops, and 1 yeast under 5.5%. And that's the way you show people that you actually know how to make beer. So that kind of idea of narrowing it down and using the ingredients to speak. Obviously I was making a lot of ales at that point, just kind of translated into lager from that perspective. And when it was time for somebody to kind of step up and take care of fermentation, I really love the idea of taking care of fermentation. And I like the idea of that kind of long time. And that used to just come in and take gravity at day 3, day 5, and really look at yeast and do all these things. And for me, taking care of beer started to become, as important as brewing it. And I think lager is definitely that. So it's just kind of natural. Plus, lager's on 175-year winning streak. So turns out you can drink a lot of it. It's my favorite beer to drink too. So this kind of all came together. I'm very technique driven.
Well, I will say at the Pills and Love Fest in Brooklyn, I think I did drink 175 beers.
Good. Yes, that's what we want to hear.
Yeah, and I'll give a shout out to some that really stood out for me because, well, first I'm going to give a shout out to Ago at Birrificio Italiano. You know, he's Tipo Pills, the style of Italian style pills, which we'll talk more about. But he brought a special beer, a second beer. It was called Delia. And I swear to God, he called the divorce beer. And I just loved it because it was 4.2%. It was a pills. It was soft and luscious. And I can't stop thinking about that one. Did you try any of Ago's beers?
I mean, I have. I've tried a bunch of his beers. I've been there before. I was there at the Pills Pride a few years ago. So yeah, I've tried all those beers. Again, probably not in the best mood to drink all those beers, but I tried them all and they're great. They make great beer. Johnny and Augustino are excellent hosts and, you know, very cool people. So yeah, definitely get to try all those beers.
So how do you describe the Italian style pills? Because my friend Sebastian Sauer at Freigeist, he texted and said, "Oh, ask him that. Why is he making the German pills?" So how is it different for you, the Italian style pills or the German pills? And what do you how do you represent that?
Okay, I got a complex answer to this question. Are we talking real Italian pills? Or are we talking overhopped American bullshit Italian pills? So I think real Italian pills is so soft and so subtle and so like kind of dreamy and citric and dusty and very lightly dry hopped. And whenever I drink an American, for the most part, American version of a quote unquote Italian pills, they're always hopped like IPA and they are completely over the top. And there's nothing that to me represents Italian pills in there. Like it belongs as like contemporary American pills or whatever people are using or IPL or any of these things. But all of the Italian pills I had in Italy, you know, are so much different than what Americans are making as quote unquote Italian pills. I was even at, let's see, it doesn't exist anymore, Delancey Street bar in Grand Delancey. There we go. Thank you. Yeah. And actually, I was there for a lager kind of event there, and I had a very fresh Tipo Pills and a very fresh, I won't name the other beer, but a very fresh beer that wasn't even an Italian style pills. And it struck me just how it wasn't that hoppy comparatively. Like, it is so subtle. And that's what I really actually like about the style. And I actually avoid them if, for the most part, unless they're actually Italian. And I just made one not too long ago and really tried to like look at exactly what Agostino was doing and try to mimic that and not just, you know, throw the wall at it. So I think there's a disconnect from an American point of view about what actually Italian pills is, personally.
So how did yours come out?
I thought it came out great. I did it with as a collab with actually works with me here, a guy named Phil with a brewery called Amalgam. And we decided to do it just like they do. Unitank, very light dry hop. It's only dry hopped for like 5 days. It's very quickly dry hopped. Doesn't sit on dry hops for a long time. It's dry hopped slightly warm, but not very warm. 2.5 pound per barrel of dry hop and no whirlpool hops. So we really tried to like do it the way that I've read all of, you know, quote unquote, you know, what Tipo is. We use slightly different hops. Obviously, I'm not trying to mimic it or copy it, but I definitely wanted to give it justice as far as the technique was concerned. I thought it turned out great.
But isn't the idea of him giving out the recipe that does he want people to copy the recipe or just wants to inspire people?
I don't know. I mean, I give out a recipe any way, shape, or form. I think it's impossible to copy something when it's, you know, brewed entirely differently. You know, the hot side preparation of the mash and the wort is completely different. Yeast strain, you know, how it's built in your brewery is completely different. But I think like, you know, using some parameters such as starting gravity, ending gravity, you know, pounds per barrel of hops, you know, the technique in which it's dry hopped, you know, what day and how long it's dry hopped for. the same alpha of hops, roughly that you're putting in it. I think all those things are how you can kind of, make that beer, your own, or like it's kind of a grid line for that beer.
Yeah, that's good. Hey Todd, at Good Word, you make an Italian style pills, don't you?
Yes, sir. We've been making one for a few years now. Been fortunate to have Tipo Pills way back in the day, and love it. Kind of like Ashley, I feel like I got into beer, starting with the stuff you kind of get that's shitty, Killians and the macro stuff, and then started at Brick Store and fell in love with big beers. Worked my way through the super bitter West Coast IPAs, and finally my nerdy self landed on the lagers for sure. But with ours, we use Vireman's Aerocoya filter malt with a step mash and a short decoction. Middle brew on the hot side, and then 1 pound per barrel for dry hop. And then we do a Croissant on that beer and attach a spunding valve. So it is a little drier, so I don't think it's quite as soft as the Tipo Pills, but it's nice. It has this kind of eucalyptus menthol thing going from that middle brew, but it's tasty.
Yeah, see, that sounds like something I would drink.
Yeah, it's good. It's called Any Day Now. But, again, compared to like the Tipo Pills, like you said, that one, some things just drink so pleasantly. I think that, balance is great, but sometimes when it's a little too bitter, I don't know. I feel like I'm still kind of working that one out, but it's nice. Yeah, it's called Any Day Now. It's kind of a troll on Trump. He was like, any day now, the virus is going to disappear. And we're like, what a fucking moron. But, sorry, I know it's in a political show.
Well, it could be, but hey. Now back to Ashley. So Ashley, diving in. So you start homebrewer. Next thing you know, you figured out your chops a little bit. The German techniques, brewing with copper, other things. What were things that you figured out that helped make your lagers as good as you wanted them?
Well, I mean, first things first is it's all about fermentation. You got to start there. Like the rest of it is above and beyond. But starting with the fermentation, pitching enough healthy yeast and understanding, what a real, lager fermentation is like. And having an understanding like the things that happen, instantaneously, within 12 hours of pitching, within 24 hours, within 48, a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. Like those are the most important parts of making lager. The rest of it is, also important, but hardly as important. If I had to think about like the things that make our beer, and our German inspired, or actually, some techniques that are not as used even as widely anymore, decoction for sure. We have a copper brew house. I think that helps with it. It was made to make the kind of beer that we make. Like it was designed that way, like you get something brand new, even made in the United States, they're just not set up in the way to make these kinds of beers, liquor to grist ratio, or like decoction or step mashing, or all of these things are just not typically what, new age manufacturers are thinking about. So it takes a little bit more from them. So old brew house, very cool. Decoction. We use a technique called flotation. So flotation tank is a part on the cold side. Even decoction is not really being as widely used in German breweries anymore. I think Weihenstephan just stopped doing it on most of their beers. But flotation, which is a process that happens right after we knock out, before we go to a fermenter. Again, that's another technique that is still pretty widely used in pale lagers in Germany, but is not used on dark lagers for whatever reason, because it is take more energy, more time, more chemicals to do. And then, I like having 2 sets of tanks, a primary fermentation and a lager tank. Again, none of these things are necessary to make good lager. They're all just little pieces that make my lager taste like my lager, that, are kind of homage to like what classic German styles were. And again, really, we're doing it quote unquote, more traditionally than a lot of breweries in Germany anymore because of the, pursuing more efficiency and pursuing, less energy uses, et cetera. So I think it's cool. I like to take as long as possible. I like it to be casual. I like to let the, quality of the ingredients speak and not try to mess with the box too much.
Well, that's a great intro.
So, Jimmy, Ashley was just here with some 3-day-old slow pour pills, and I can tell you, everything is working fucking great.
I know. Todd and I could have done this together yesterday.
Yeah.
Oh man,
I was there.
Hanging out with us. Yeah. But that slow pour pills, I've had it at least half dozen or more times, and it's always stellar. But I don't think I've had it at source, but that was so fresh in the cans. It was pretty fucking wonderful. So,
what were you doing down there, Ashley?
Doing a collab, making a pills actually, for Todd's anniversary in November. So yeah, we made a pills. Used some whole leaf Tettnang. Made Todd take apart his brew house to do funny things, and hung out by the pool and drank beer too. So we got all of it.
It was a great time.
It was a great time.
I always feel pretty good, especially when I'm solo. I feel confident, whatever. Having Ashley was like a masterclass, and also like don't fuck up. Don't fuck up in front of the person. But what was funny, she mentioned like pulling apart the little manifold on our brew house. I've been using this brew house for 7 years. We've talked about some stuff like this that we ended up doing, but the terror that I was trying to keep inside of my body was clearly showing. I was probably vibrating a little bit while we were doing this, and it's funny. My assistant brewer Clay, he later was like, "I can't believe they got you to do this while we were brewing." Like, again, I don't want to sound like an old hen or something where I don't want to try new things, but if I was going to ever trust anybody, it was definitely Ashley. And wow. And honestly, I think it's going to be a great fucking beer.
So, Ashley, you're like the brew coach.
I mean, 100%. We've been between myself and my husband Bill. He's worked on a ton of brew houses, and we're all there. We're all smart. We can do this. Didn't feel particularly crazy, but it's good, right? We learned something new. To me, like, this whole idea of collaboration is very near and dear to me, and I take it very seriously. In that, like, a lot of people, and not to talk too much shit about people, but that's one of my favorite things to do. And talk shit and drink lager, which I just have a drinking lager right now. So, is that a lot of people use collaborations to, like, quote unquote, collab up, or put their brands together. And I just don't believe in any of that. I think collaboration should be pretty organic. It should exist between people who, already kind of like to hang out together or want to, do those things. It has to make sense. You have to learn something. It can't just be a regurgitation of something that you already do. It should be something that maybe is like, it doesn't have to be a crazy departure. That also shouldn't be a crazy departure from the things you do regularly. And again, you should be able to learn something from the process or something from the person or whatever it is. So if collaboration doesn't fit into that kind of like category for me, I just say no. I don't do that many of them. I think in 8 years, 20, that's it. Like, I know it sounds like a lot, but not when you think about how often really people are collaborating with people that they don't even really know that much about. And to me, it's really important to do that and to do it in person and to be present. And again, learn something about what we're doing. And it was cool to go there. And, we don't have a hop back. So I'm excited to see exactly, these hops that we smelled and we put in there, what exactly they do to the beer, because a lot of the other parameters are very much the same. We've got malt that I'm familiar with. We've got a yeast strain I'm familiar with. So in this way, we can learn something very specific about beer. And Todd learned something about his brew house and hopefully learned, he's going to use a little different technique on some of this stuff, and hopefully he'll learn something as well.
Yeah, honestly, we're already planning on doing another beer with this hop back. again, Jim, if you can just imagine this, you know, it's not a huge space, but it's a pretty big piece of equipment and it gets used so little. And so just on like the utility side, it's like, this is pretty cool. But I will say, like, for what Ashley was saying, like, about collabs, it means so much. Like, I've been wanting to make a beer with Ashley for a long time. She and I have been friends for a while. Early on, I will say a good word was, we're out here in the burbs, you know, like, we're not in the city. So I feel like I was trying to make beers with people a lot, you know, just to make a little bit of noise. But like over the years, it's fewer and fewer, just because of like, what's it changed? You're still going to go back to your town and do the stuff that you're doing. And, you know, so unless you have that friendship, like Ashley mentioned, like, what's the point? You know, so I feel like I end up doing beers with people that I've already collabed with more than like newer folks.
Exactly.
Just keep my circle kind of smaller. But this one was definitely the like, holy shit, we just made a beer with the best lager brewery in the country. I'm just saying, I'm trying to be funny, but I don't think there's another brewery that I'm like, wow, that would, there's not a topper, you know what I mean?
Oh, Todd, that's so nice.
I'm not trying to embarrass anybody. I'm just saying, that's how I feel. I mean, going to, and now we were talking about this when we were hanging out too, but like during CBC, I didn't know Ashley or Bill or any of the other people that worked there. And just going there and just seeing this fucking place that was already doing this dangerous and scary thing with lager, not, you know, scary in the way that like no one else is fucking doing this really, you know? And it was busy as shit. And there was everybody in the world that was in beer was in this place, and everybody's looking around the beers and just like, holy shit, you know? It was, it's far removed from the Instagrammable bullshit craft culture that, I don't know, that people seem to chase for such a long time, and maybe still are. I don't even know.
No, you're on it. What about? So tell me more about the hotback.
So it's just a stainless steel vessel that you can put whole wheat hops in. They're really messy, and if you put them inside your kettle, if you don't have a separate whirlpool, it can get trapped in the heat X. So it's just a way to kind of clean, you know, do something a little easier, just because of the material is all. But yeah, I can send you pictures of it.
Yes, that's some pictures. And Ashley, what's the flotation tank?
So it's kind of so basically, okay, so you have your whole brewing process, you have the hot side, and the end of the hot side basically ends at the whirlpool, right? So the whirlpool, what happens is it, you know, spins in a circle, and your heaviest material ends up in the center of it. So, you know, proteins, you know, denatured proteins, hop material, etc., like all ends up in your whirlpool, kind of coagulated together. And so you take all that wort, you know, the unfermented beer, away from that. Too much of that stuff is toxic to yeast. Also, it'll really mess with your heat exchanger. So once it goes through the heat exchanger and we knock out or cool down our wort to like 3 degrees Celsius, so pretty cold. I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit. I know weather in Fahrenheit, and I know brewing stuff in Celsius. It's pretty useless, honestly. So, you know, we cool it down very, very cold. What happens in this separate tank, we actually cool it down and put it in a separate tank called a flotation tank. And in this tank, it is a flat bottom tank, and it is unjacketed, and we oxygenate on our way there. And what happens over time is that dead yeast cells and unisomerized alpha acids and some malt stuff, it actually floats to the top of this mass of wort. And it sits there for 2 hours. And after 2 hours, we remove all the wort from underneath this like floating carpet layer that's kind of chilling there. So that all sits there, and we end up with healthier yeast and a kind of a cleaner wort when it gets to the fermenter. So we do that on every single one of our batches. And again, it adds about 4 hours to the day between the 2 hours of flotation, the transferring it to the fermenter, and the cleaning of the vessel. But to me, it makes, I don't know, it's hard to describe, but there's something about, I think, the bitterness quality that it softens. I think there's something about, you know, if you have maybe not as clean of a runoff as you'd like to have. I think that obviously with yeast, getting rid of any dead yeast cells is very beneficial. So yeah, it's just one little tiny thing that maybe you wouldn't be able to tell if we did or didn't do it, but I think it makes a difference in our beers and making them taste particularly like ours.
Well, it sounds to me like a slow simmered old fashioned veal bone stock.
It kind of is, only very cold and not disturbed.
Oh yeah.
And no baby cows were harmed.
It's more like have you ever made like crystallized ice, like very pure ice?
No.
Okay, so like they have these pretty cool ice makers. You put them in your freezer, and you put hot water in them, so it has less oxygen in them, and you basically freeze it. And what happens is actually some of the impurities sink to the bottom because they're heavier, and you get a more pure ice cube that has like no oxygen in it, so it's like crystal clear, has none of the kind of untasty minerals and stuff like that in it. So it's kind of like that. It's just like it's getting rid of some of the stuff that you don't need in the beer. Some of the stuff that immediately is not useful. You can kind of achieve some of the same thing by doing a dump off the fermenter the next day. A lot of that's already sank to the bottom again, so it floats to the top and then coagulates and sinks to the bottom. Once it sinks to the bottom, you don't really need that. It's not doing any good for the beer. So you can actually get rid of some of that just by dumping on the bottom of your tank the next day.
I'm going to do that right now with our beer.
Yes, you should. I can't believe I didn't tell you to do a 24-hour dump.
Since we're done with this, I'm doing that shit.
So, Todd, is that something you just learned, Todd?
I mean, dumping yeast on beer, yes. 24 hours, 100%. But like dumping yeast is one of those things that I think people don't do often enough. And I'll be honest with you, over this last really 6 or 7 months, I've gotten pretty diligent about doing it just really often. I mean, still trying to get to the point where I feel like I'm not doing it so much that I'm losing a lot more volume. You know what I mean? Like we have 10 and 20 barrel tanks, and, we'll transfer typically about 8.5 to 9 barrels of lager. And they've been considerably less the more I've dumped. So I'm still trying to get a handle on that, but I'd rather have less beer that's quite delicious than a lot more beer that's just not perfect or not nearly as perfect.
Yeah, Todd, I can't believe I didn't tell you that. But I think...
as soon as I get done, I'm doing it, I promise.
Yeah. So every time after you make lager, it's really good practice, like 24 hours later, to do a cone dump of... I'm on a cone dump of like 3 gallons or so, not even 3 gallons or so of just, you're going to see that stuff. That's not even yeast. It's just going to be your dead stuff, your trub, your early quitters. I think you'll find that the beer will brighten up slightly faster and that your yeast pitch will be cleaner and better, or if you're going to reuse it. And if you're not going to reuse it, it's just going to be a better yeast. It's going to get out of the way faster. Okay, there's something about doing that. I mean, that stuff is stuff that's not useful, right? It's already great. Right. It's already out of there, and you don't need it. So
that's
you're not really dumping it. Yeah,
you're saying 3 gallons on like even a 20 barrel, or just like whatever.
Yeah, just 3 gallons. Okay. You know what I mean? No, it doesn't have to be a ton. Half a bucket. You'll see it. You'll look at it, and you'll see that it's not yeasty. It's a lot of other junk that you don't need. So awesome. You can achieve some of the same things. So a true flotation tank will take out about 60 to 65% of the cold trub, and something like a settling tank. So an old school settling tank is a lot of what people look at. It's not in sour beer brewing or wild beer brewing. It kind of actually looks a lot like a cool ship, but it's used kind of as a pre-cool. A lot of them were like 18 inches deep, and you could really get rid of like maybe 20, 30% of cold break. And then you can also get rid of about 20% of your cold break just by doing what I just said, letting it sit in a fermenter, and then just dropping that off the bottom. You can get rid of like 20% of your cold break by just doing that.
I love it.
So you should do that, honestly, a lot. It can work on some of your other beers too, just pulling that stuff off right away. And honestly, on your ales, I'd think more like 12 hours, like get done the night before, and just dump the bottom of the tank, dump a gallon off the bottom of the tank the next day.
Perfect.
Because all that stuff is again, it's toxic to the yeast. It's not good for anything. It's the stuff that is already, you know what I mean? It's quit already. It's yeast that's quit already. So it's dead yeast, a lot of it.
Well, also I was going to ask you, and sorry to do it on air, but we were talking about compressed air, and like I feel like I read that that the pure air that I'm using and most breweries are using, that's toxic to yeast, right? Is that right?
It can be to.
I thought I read it in the book y'all just put out a while back. And I kept forgetting to ask you.
Yeah. When it's we knock out so cold. So this is a part of our process that I think again. We knock out so cold, 3 degrees C, which I think is like 36 degrees Fahrenheit or something like that.
Oh, shit.
That, it can, liquids can absorb a lot of gas when they're colder, right? That's why we carbonate. You can't carbonate a beer warm, right?
Right.
So when it's colder, you are absorbing far more oxygen. And there you can over-oxygenate yeast. So by the way we do it, which is sterile compressed air, there's enough oxygen in the compressed air to get into the wort, to be, to do the aerobic, to help the yeast do its aerobic portion, right? To get it all ready to go. So, so we use sterile compressed air instead of pure O2 because of how cold we knock out. It would actually be bad for the yeast.
Cool. Awesome. I want to come see that setup so I can see the compressed air situation for show.
Yeah, you know where to find me.
I think we all got to go out to Bierstadt Lager House in Denver soon. Ashley, I want to hear more of this journey of yours because it sounds like you've got a wealth of knowledge. When did you first learn about these techniques that you're talking about? Was it all at once with someone teaching you, or it just kind of took you a few years?
Well, I think it kind of started out with, when I worked at Dry Dock, and I worked for this company that was a 7-barrel brew house. They made a little bit of everything, right? So, but honestly, I've been extremely lucky in my career. Even as long as, a couple places that I've been, I've always had capabilities. Even on that little 7-barrel, we had the ability to decoct and step mash and the ability to knock out very cold, which I don't think are always things that breweries, do very well, like when they're being put together. You don't necessarily need to have that, but I've always had, a kind of a grip of techniques or a grip of ways to do things at my fingertips, so there was always the ability to try different stuff. And not just do it one way in particular. I have to give a lot of credit to my husband, my partner, who was actually the head brewer at the time at Dry Dock, way before anything was ever romantic between us. But it's always something he really enjoyed was German style beer, and he put a lot of faith in me from the beginning because of my eagerness to learn and be there. To take care of these beers and to learn about it, and would constantly, be asking and talking about it and learning about it, and brought me back, my first beer from Germany, and, talking about pale lager and the nuances of these things, and, just getting me to be a better brewer, to look at the ingredients, for how do you want to showcase them and not how do you want to hide them. And, so it kind of started there. And after a while, it just kind of became the thing that I should have known early that I was probably going to be better at than being creative. It's never been in my blood to be a creative person necessarily. I was even in art class. I tell this story a lot. I was in art class in high school and really good at it and really good at pottery and stuff like that, but totally void of any sort of creativity. The assignment would be to make a box, and I would spend all of this time trying to perfect corners. And then it'd be like, okay, decorate the box. And I'd be like, I literally have no desire to decorate this box. I have no idea what I'm going to do. That falls so far outside of my, it falls so far outside of my skill set. So it's kind of the same way when I realized, the parameters you're changing are very subtle, and the mash techniques and stuff like that, it's just about learning and reading. And I read and learned as much as I could. And when Bill, my husband partner, when he opened his own brewery, he brought me with him to be the head brewer there because of all the things that I had already taken on myself to learn. And it was a primarily German style brewery, but we made some Hefeweizen, which I used to really adore making, and now I hate making. And, Kolsch and alt beer and stuff like that. It made a little bit of everything. And I was pretty much put in charge of all of it from there, and got the opportunity to go to Germany and meet some people. I had access to a lot of notes that a lot of very smart and very, process-oriented people had given to me about some famous breweries such as, Augustiner and Ondex and Hofbräu and Weinstefan, and having access to these notes and having access to textbooks. And I've always been I got my degree in math. Like, I really like textbooks. I like nerdy, weird stuff like that. So, I kind of was insatiable as far as the reading goes. And then to see some of these beers, finally getting to drink some of these beers in person in Germany and seeing how those techniques affected those beers. And then seeing what we were doing at the place that I worked before, which I don't have a good relationship with, so I don't ever mention their name. But doing that there, and then just realizing like, oh, if I get the opportunity to do it myself, I'm going to focus even further. I'm going to be even more narrow than we were there. So when we got the opportunity to open up Bierstadt in 2014 is when we signed a lease here and didn't start actually brewing till 2016. It was just another opportunity in all those years to like kind of hone in what we wanted to do. And to that, we decided we were only going to make lager and basically be a 3 malt, 2 hop, 1 yeast brewery. Some stuff for specialty and collabs and stuff like that. For the most part, we only make 3 beers. I have no more than 6 beers on tap at a time. And that's only happened like 4 times in the entire time we've ever been open. So what are the
3 beers that
we always have? Slow pour Pils, we always have Helles, and we always have Dunkel. And those are the 3 beers we make year round. And everything else is, right now the seasonal will be Oktoberfest coming up here soon. Again, a collab here and there. But to me, like, completely narrowing in on one thing is very exciting to me. And I could keep doing that forever and ever and ever. Is just honestly, if we never made Dunkel again, I'd probably be fine. If we just made Pils and Helles forever, I would be very happy to do that. I love the idea of trying to make something perfect, to try and hone in little tiny techniques and see how they work out at the end of the day, to change little minute things to try and achieve something that, I think that only we can perceive, but trying to make something as perfect as possible and as consistent as possible. And I think a lot of times in craft beer, I think the idea of consistency really goes out the door. It's like, oh, we'll just make a new beer. It's something new or a new style or whatever it is. Like, and a lot of times, the big breweries get slagged. I mean, they should get slagged for a lot of good reasons, access to marketplace, etc. But as far as the beer quality goes, you tell me you can't have a Budweiser on one side of the country and a Budweiser on the other side of the country and they taste the same. And there's something quite remarkable about that to me. So I always hope that that's the case, is that when it's fresh, that it always tastes the same.
Great intro. We're just going to take a short break. We'll be back in a few minutes on Beer Sessions Radio.
Whether you're a chef or just love going to restaurants, you know the best ingredients are everything, especially when it comes to beef. In Northern Australia, there's a different approach to raising high-quality beef. Westholme, based in Queensland and Northern Territory, is working with the land to create nature-led Australian Wagyu. They steward 16 million acres of rangeland, guided by their natural ecosystem, and are led by a belief that if they balance the needs of their cattle with the needs of their environment, both can thrive. Their team of rangeland experts and nature managers use a variety of tools like satellites that assess grass health and on-the-ground research to monitor and respond to the welfare of the environment. These cows graze on native grasses like Mitchell grass, which is only found in Australia, along with dozens of other plants, herbs, and seasonal legumes. Cattle are happier when they have the freedom to forage and explore, so Westholme ensures they can roam wild, foraging at will for the first 2 to 3 years of their lives. The result is high-quality Wagyu beef that reflects the terroir of Northern Australia and a flavor suited to complement any cuisine. Westholme believes that when nature leads, flavor follows. Learn more at westholme.com.
Hey, welcome back to Beer Sessions Radio on Heritage Radio Network. It's August 2024, and I'm talking with Ashley Carter of Bierstadt Lagerhaus and Todd DiMatteo of Good Word Brewing. This is kind of the Pils and Love Take Two. We all met up at the Pils and Love Fest back in Brooklyn in June, and I really wanted to talk a little further with some of the brewers. So, Ashley, you're really schooling us on Pils, and I know you're helping out Todd as well. The German traditions, which I love. You mentioned that you're not making Hefeweizen, and I also read that in your early, beer education, you were a fan of alt beers.
Yeah, alt beer is kind of the thing that got me into wanting to make beer professionally. I don't know, you kind of get slogged down. Everything's IPA, and kind of the first alt beer I had kind of like changed a lot of things for me, right? It's kind of an amber colored beer, but very dry. Alt beer can't really be defined in a box, even though a lot of people want to define it in a box. They range from malty, like Schusel, and to more bitter like Fuchsing and Irrige. Like, they are not just one thing. I prefer the drier, more bitter ones. But I just think like that beer for me was a very cool intro. The first homebrew I ever made was a Alaskan Amber Clone, which is an alt beer. So very low alcohol, very dry, a little bit of bitterness. It just kind of hits all the marks. And I do love that style. And I honestly just recently got the opportunity about a year and a half ago to actually go have a bunch of alt beers at the Altstadt in Dusseldorf.
Wow.
But, to me, again, like, I don't know, ale. I kind of joke that like my body rejects ale at this point. It's not true, but I like to keep that that kind of aura going. I don't know. It's just, it falls a little bit too far outside of the kind of one thing I like doing. And I like when other people make them, and I've made them as collabs, and I find that fun and interesting. But as far as like what I want to do every day, it just doesn't quite fall into what I want to do. Hefeweizen too. I mean, quite frankly, a lot of German places have Hefeweizen, and a lot of people expect a Hefeweizen. Actually, I have a funny story about a review we got one time. But it really has nothing in common with making lager. There's literally not a technique about it that has anything to do with making lager. So it's kind of funny that they kind of get put together just because they're both German. But honestly, if I were going to make Hefeweizen, I would want to open an entire brewery that only made Hefeweizen, and that's it. Just so I could do all the things that I think it takes to make really excellent Hefeweizen. Also, it's like a finicky bitch, and I hate when you try to do things right and the same all the time and it comes out differently. Like that, to me, emotionally, I just can't handle it.
Well, then I guess you put me in my place, because in the spring there was an East Coast brewery that we tried their Hefeweizen, and I said, "Oh my God, this should be the beer of summer." And then I went to Pils and Love, and I was like, I like drinking the Pils. So
yeah, exactly. I mean, I love Hefeweizen, like a really excellent Hefeweizen. The problem is there's not that many of them. They're tough to make. I don't think people give them enough credit as far as how difficult they are to keep, again, consistent. And really, some of the coolest techniques you can use with them are extremely difficult to pull off with the equipment that most people have. So I think it's always amazing when I have a really good one made in the United States, which there are a handful. I think that there's a brewery here in town called Westbound and Down. Theirs can be really good. There's a brewery in Fort Collins called Zwei. They make a really good Hefeweizen. Let's see, Live Oak obviously makes a stellar Hefeweizen. Enegren in California makes a stellar Hefeweizen. If they're not really good, I don't know. They don't hit the spot for me unless they're like superb. Whereas kind of like a pretty good Pils will get it done for me.
Wow, I think I got to follow up with you on that list.
Yeah.
Ashley's list of favorite Hefeweizen. A Hefeweizen story, which pretend you're advising me. So I'm not going to say the name, but it's a brewery that I liked, and it was an East Coast brewery. And years ago, they had a lot of different small batch beers, and one was an American wheat beer, which I really liked. I liked it as a fresh summer beer, and the way they made it was, kind of ale-like and simple. And I remember they went to larger production, and they had to bring in a German brewer because they were brewing at a much larger scale. And I remember it went from just being this American wheat ale to suddenly a textbook Hefeweizen, which was
Nice.
amazing. And it was perfectly made. But it wasn't the same beer. And
No.
yeah.
No, they're definitely not. I mean, American wheat beers, that can be fine. Honestly, I think I don't know that I see the point of American wheat. I think just a good old blonde ale will do the trick. But yeah, I mean, to make a good Hefeweizen, I'd love to know what brewery that is, because I definitely have not seen that many.
Yeah. We'll keep up. We'll keep in touch about it.
We'll trade some lists. Perfect.
Oh yeah. And Todd, for you, what's coming up? You've got your small beer event coming up soon.
The next one we have is Le Bon. That's on September 14th, and it's a Saison and Oyster Fest with live music. That one's a lot smaller than Little Beer. That one, Little Beer, is in the springtime. Actually, this year is a little early spring. It's March 29th, 2025. But Le Bon's a good one. It's just really, it's kind of more of an intimate kind of hang. It's, about 15 breweries. Hopefully some guests will show up for this event. Selling tickets for a festival is one of the most nerve-wracking things I've ever found to do in my life. But, last year with Little Beer, we actually sold out. We keep it pretty small. We sold out, which was great. And it was a ton of fun. But, yeah, besides Le Bon, I guess I'm already kind of focusing my attention on our anniversary, which is the week of November 11th through the 17th. And like Ashley was saying, they were here. They're the first of 7 collabs we're doing. And then we're also trying to plan a beer dinner right in the middle of that week with Ashley and two other breweries. So it'll be the first time that we have 3 breweries besides our own to be part of this collab dinner. I'm waiting for the end of this week. So my chef is like closing on his house. He's kind of stressed before I hit him with, hey, man, can we do a couple more courses than normal? So I want him to get done moving this weekend. So, but yeah, a lot of good things going up.
Well, Ashley, if you're doing a pairing dinner with some of your beers, what are some favorite food pairings?
I think the best thing for slow pour is another slow pour, personally. I think they really pair perfectly together. It's the thing about lager. I think it kind of goes with everything. I think the only place lager and beer in general that struggles a little bit is in the dessert course. And then again, I don't really eat dessert. I prefer just scotch. So, I think for the most part, you can kind of do anything. I think it's cool. Unlike wine, it really has so much more, depth. I've had, double IPA with like really strong blue cheese. I think that's crazy interesting. I think, pills and steak, pills and spicy food, like those pills you were drinking at Todd's place with that Szechuan food was perfect.
Oh yeah, that was good.
Like lager and spicy food. I mean, there's a reason why, they drink it everywhere. Lager and barbecue. Dunkel. My friends at Kansas City Beer Company, they're in Kansas City. They sell so much Dunkel, like a crazy amount of Dunkel. Like 60% of the production is Dunkel, which is kind of insane. And there are a lot of barbecue joints, and it goes so good together, Dunkel and barbecue. I think, like, I love spicy food. I love ethnic food. I love just Italian food, pasta. Like, I love a little bit of everything. And I don't think that there's a food that, like, Pils or Helles doesn't go with. Maybe dessert, as I said. But for the most part.
But you got Dunkel for that, though. I love the Dunkel. You said earlier that you could just brew Helles and Pils. And, man, I think this weekend, like, sitting by the pool even, I think I had 3 or 4 Dunkels. And that's the first time I had it in a long time. And it was drinking fucking beautifully. Because
it's like such a sleeper beer.
We're creatures of habit. I drink more pale lager than anything else. But I was like, man, this beer is fucking delish.
Mm-hmm. I agree with you. It's just kind of a sleeper beer. But, again, for the most part, I think that these beers, they kind of can go with anything. And I think you just have to be creative about it. And I think, like, there's not one specific, food item. It's not like red wine, big, bold reds and steak. Like, I think it's so much more subtle than that. And, like, then you can get things that are more interesting, yeast-wise with Saison and wit beer, Allagash white and oysters. Like, that's one of my favorite things on the planet. Like, there's not much that kind of can compare to that. So I think it's just cool that beer is so versatile in that way. It's got maltiness, it's got bitterness, it's got sweetness, it's got acidity. It's got, a bunch of things that you can play up or play down. You don't have to just constantly play against it. You can actually, do something that enhances the flavors of it. Unlike, I think wine constantly is trying to play against the flavors of it, right? It's kind of a dichotomy, whereas I think beer can be placed either as an opposite to it or a complementary flavor to it.
Yeah.
Todd, I bet your dinner's going to be pretty cool in November.
It's going to be fucking radical. I mean, besides a little beer, our beer dinners are my favorite thing we do. But yeah, it's gonna be great. We usually do 5 courses and a welcome beer, but like I was saying, once I get my chef out of the weeds this weekend, I'm gonna hit him to see if we want to do a couple more courses. Yeah, they're a lot of fun.
Well, please share that with us, and we're looking forward to it. Before we close out, I'd like you each to ask the question of the other. So, Todd, I know you just work with Ashley, but Ashley, do you have a question for Todd? And check in with what he's doing. Is he doing his homework?
I don't know about that. A question for Todd. Give me a second here. Let me think about this for just a moment. I've got some good questions in my back pocket, but I have to.
I got one for you.
You got one for me? Okay.
Besides Taylor Swift, who's your favorite on your Spotify right now?
On my Spotify, actually, I meant to text you this morning. My Spotify playlist was millennial movies of the 90s. That was my Spotify playlist this morning. But other than Taylor Swift, I would have to say, probably Portugal the Man.
Oh, yeah, you mentioned those guys.
Mm-hmm, Portugal the Man, or what have I been really big on lately? Or Black Keys. I listen to a lot of Black Keys.
Yeah, love them.
Those are kind of my jams. Or 90s hip hop. I just big fan. Kind of get everything there. I'm kind of all over the place, except for jam bands. Those can nope.
I remember that part.
Yeah. I told my husband if he ever told me he wanted to go to like a Widespread Panic, I'd divorce him on the spot.
Who are you and what have you done with Bill I?
Who are you? Exactly. Okay. I like to ask you this. What is your, impress a person meal? Because Todd's a really good cook, by the way. He cooked for me all weekend, which was excellent. And I share a love of cooking. Like, if you could pick one meal that would be, your go-to, takes 45 minutes, what do you think, you're the, not the thing that takes the longest or, that's the most intense prep. What is the thing that you think you can make in, 45 minutes that you are just the absolute best at that nobody can touch?
Okay, I love that question. I'll say it depends on one of two things. How close are we? And if we're close, I'm going to make you a rustic meal. My favorite rustic meal is something my grandma used to make. It's asopado de pollo, which is, basically chicken and rice with olives and capers. It's wonderful. My oldest daughter, she's a vegetarian, so I make it differently now, but it's we're pretty close. I'm going to do that. If it's somebody who's
meal.
Yeah, hey, I can knock this out real quick, and we're homies. I'll make something that's comforting, But if somebody's coming over that it's kind of a dinner hang or whatever, and I don't know them super well, I might do a sous vide ribeye with mashed potatoes and I don't know, maybe some cream corn, something still kind of just chill.
Yeah, I like that. I want that first one, by the way.
Next time you're here, you're getting asopado de pollo. It's one of my favorite things to make.
Yes, well, there we go.
Todd, if you're that good, then I can't wait to try what your chef will make.
Yeah, he's way better than me. I'm usually good if I'm not under the gun. It's the same thing. If you want a cocktail and you got a beer in front of you, I'm good. But if you try throwing behind our bar and you want a cocktail, you're in trouble. Unless you want a draft cocktail.
All right. Well, listen, this is a real treat for me. I mean, the Pills and Love vibe just keeps going. It was so great to finally meet you in person, Todd, and to meet you, Ashley. And just thank you so much. Thanks to Armin, our engineer. Thanks to Ashley and Todd. I'm Jimmy Carboni. We'll catch you next time on Beer Sessions Radio. All right. Thanks so much, guys. Woo.
Thank you
so much. Appreciate you.
Beer Sessions Radio is powered by Simplecast. Thanks for listening to Heritage Radio Network. Food radio supported by you. Keep in touch at heritageradionetwork.org/subscribe.